this spot. Oh, no, that's on the wrong side of the river. That's where the Germans are. And he finds out that he's supposed to drop 7 miles north and west of the city. He's like, wait a minute. We're supposed to capture the bridge. We're going to land, pack up our gear, and run 7 miles and get there before the Germans know what's up. Oh yeah, don't worry about it. He's like, worry about it? How can I not worry about it? He's told, don't worry. You're going to get 4 Jeeps outfitted with machine guns. They will sprint ahead. They will put up a roadblock on the bridge until your guys get there. All right. So the airborne drops in. But as soon as they do, the Germans have that map. They know what's going on, and the Germans are already overrunning British landing zones. So the British barely get on the ground, and the Germans are moving in to intercept them. Brigadier General, a guy named Lathbury, is sent to lead the Jeeps into Arnhem. He gets about 2 miles down the road, and he runs into Kurt Student and the SS Panzer Grenadiers. And a battle breaks out, and Lathbury is wounded. Only one of the 4 Jeeps that were supposed to make it in, 2 of them are shot down, 1 crashes on landing, the 4th one is shot up right here with Lathbury just getting on the way. So here is Robert Earthheart. This is Lathbury, and this is kind of the hero of the Battle of Arnhem, a guy named Colonel John Frost, who he and his men just do incredible things with absolutely nothing to work with. And so a couple photos here. This is the terrain. This is that attack I told you that happened just as the Guards armored started going. Tanks were on the right side of the road and Jeeps were on the left. You can see that they're just bumper to bumper. And here's a British machine gunner laying out in the open. There's absolutely no cover. They can't see where the Germans are, and they've got nothing to hide behind. And over here, you can see it got some little arrows here. These are 2 members of the Dutch resistance. They're laughing, they're smoking American cigarettes. And these guys they're dragging behind them are German officers who were hiding or collaborators. And it looks good early on for the people of Eindhoven and Vegel who are having those big parties. There's nothing to worry about. We can shoot these Germans, we can shoot these collaborators because the Allies are here. Well, Bitrich, guy who was drinking with his boss, reacts with lightning speed. The 9th Panzer overruns the British drop zones. Some of the follow-up waves of the British soldiers are actually shot coming down in their parachutes. They don't even get the ground before the Germans are on them. The 10th Panzer is headed to Nijmegen to block the bridge. And Earthheart was issued brand new radios. If you have any problem whatsoever, Robert, call us, we'll get you reinforcements. Well, he had new radios, but the batteries that he was issued and the crystals for the batteries went with the old radios. No one thought to test them in the new equipment. So as they get out there and they're cranking the handle, nothing happens. They can't even talk to each other across the field, let alone radio back to Montgomery. And Earthheart is like, are you kidding me? Is there anything else that can possibly go wrong? When Lathbury is wounded, the rest of the British paratroopers are told to scatter and get to Arnhem any way you can. Well, a guy who finds a path that runs along the Lower Rhine River on one of the 3 different routes is Colonel John Frost. And this is the Arnhem River Bridge over the Rhine. Once you got to this side of the Arnhem Bridge, it was flat running all the way to Berlin. This is the south side of the bridge, this is the north side, and this is where the British are going to come through town and try and get across this bridge. And these 2 houses, this was a hotel, this was a private home. It had to be gorgeous, riverfront property, this big giant, medieval mansion overlooking the bridge. Well, John Frost and his men will come up the river, they will sneak their way in here, and they will start coming across the bridge when all of a sudden the Germans show up. And the British do a pretty good job. They get up on the heights, they fire some machine guns, and they have a couple bazookas with them, and they stack up some German vehicles, but now the Germans know they're there. John Frost has a couple hundred guys with him, and he's radioing, hey, this is Frost, hey, we got to Arnhem River Bridge, there's a bunch of Germans here, it looks like it's SS, come in, anybody over? Nothing. By the way, this is Frost, up here in Arnhem, is anybody out there? And he realizes he's stuck. Now, the fluorescent green are the British landing zones, supply zones, and where the paratroopers were going to be dropped in. Immediately upon landing, you can see the Germans move to intercept them. And why that is important, Frost and his men are going to need supplies, food, ammunition, and clothing. Every time the Allies fly over when they're able, they drop supplies. Who gets them? The Germans. All right? Once again, the British, just like the Americans, have rifles and light machine guns against tanks. And they literally have no chance. Fighting up in there is, again, the father of the German paratroopers, Kirk Student. Germans have their end of the bridge ready. By the next day, 2 more battalions of paratroopers show up, so there's going to be several thousand British paratroopers in Arnhem. If they've got any backup, if they've got tanks, they're probably going to be successful. However, the Germans want the British off the other side. And it's wave after wave of SS Fallschirmjäger and British 1st Airborne paratrooper fighting. Both sides are cutting each other up pretty bad. But the Arnhem Bridge wasn't the only, Arnhem River Bridge wasn't the only bridge in the city. The Germans infiltrate downriver, where British reinforcements are supposed to land, and they cross over. Also, they bring in a King Tiger, and it pretty much drives across the bridge, shooting its cannon at known German positions. The three, just lost, I always call them the Panzerfaust, the 3 bazookas that are fired at them, 2 miss, 1 scores a direct hit, but it does nothing to the King Tiger. And the King Tiger just pretty much monster trucks all the other rubble that the British had stacked up on the bridge, and now slams an open gateway into where the paratroopers were fighting from rooftops, from windowsills, from everywhere. Earthheart wants to know what's going on. Radios don't work, he hasn't heard from anybody. He goes forward and finds Lathbury wounded. And they take over this farmhouse. A Dutch resistance fighter's wife and children were home. They've got a big chateau. It has turned into a headquarters and a field hospital. Where's Frost? Anybody know where Frost is? No? Well, I'm going to keep going on up to Arnhem. So, Earthheart will make it to Frost. He will see what's going on and says, John, hang on. I'm going to get some reinforcements. As Earthheart leaves, there is a running gun battle between British paratroopers and German Fallschirmjägers in the alleyways and backyards and rooftops of Arnhem. The city becomes a battleground. Earthheart is able to get away, but Frost and his men are barely hanging on. Where are the tanks? They were supposed to be here. We landed on the 17th, the 18th, the 19th, it's the 20th. There is nobody here. Airborne paratroopers are isolated. Their only hope is coming on a one-lane, one-way street from 63 miles away. And the big problem is, going back to D-Day, Eisenhower had that big decision to make. Do I go during this lull in a hurricane, or do I not? Weather was all important. Every meteorologist, like tonight, Greg Fish was predicting Armageddon, was watching the weather on D-Day. Well, Sunday the 17th was a beautiful sunny day. For the next 8 days, it rained or there was low-level clouds for the next week. What had gotten the Allied army across France was the combined armored infantry air support. How in God's name did they know it was going to, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. How did they not think to check the weather? Or did they, and did they ignore it? You don't drop paratroopers when it's going to rain for the next week. You just don't do it. What happened here? So, more questions. Earthheart even asked Montgomery before they started. He's like, how long are we going to have to hold the bridge? Montgomery says, no more than 2 days. Don't worry, Robbie, I'll be there in 2 days. Earthheart said, well, we're airborne. We'll double it. We can hold for 4. There's absolutely no way we can do more than that. You had better be there. By the 5th day, Earthheart says, I got to find a different way to get help. Frost, you're on your own. Frost and his men are fighting, but they're low on ammo, they're low on food, and despite several heroic efforts of guys from the 82nd, guys from the British 1st Airborne, they can't get into Arnhem. The Guards' armored division was 20 miles away. They heard they're fighting. At this point, there was nothing in between them and Arnhem, and they don't go forward. They were told to wait, and that's exactly what they do. I like to think this could be American hubris. If there's a group of Americans, and they're 20 miles away and their buddies are going to get shot, someone's going to say, well, there are 3 things that could happen. We could go up there and save them and not get in trouble, or we could go up there and get killed with our buddies. Both of those 2 are better options than sitting here doing absolutely nothing. But that was how Montgomery had conditioned his army. And so during this time, the Germans begin to counterattack. They sneak out into the fields well behind the Allied line, and they begin picking off tanks and troop trucks. Things are smashed into rubble. This is the bridge in Eindhoven when the Germans begin to counterattack with everything they have. Might be hard to see, but these are Sherman tanks. This is the field. This is the raised like dam or dike roadbed, and the tanks driving across it. You can see here, in a little bit in the background, there's nothing. There's this flat, wide open field. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They can't drive down here because the ground is too wet and the tank would just sink. And so now this becomes Hell's Highway. The shooting gallery is open for business. Now, I always show this picture of Model because, God, I can't stand him because he's got that stupid monocle, the stereotypical monocle. I hate that thing, all right? This is Heinz Gudrun, inventor of the German paratrooper, and this is Wilhelm Bittrich right here, kind of just a, no nonsense, Germanic-looking guy. Here we go, game on. Bad weather continues. Frost and his men will miraculously hold out for 4 nights in 5 days. Near the end, Frost is shot right through, his right leg is shot through his quad. The same bullet goes through his left knee and he is down. He looks around at his men and they are fought out. Of the 3,000 he fought with, he's down to 100 fighting men. Without any ammunition, he is forced to surrender. And he's worried because 2 days earlier, under flag of truce, William Bittrich's aide walks across Arnhem Bridge and says, hey, I need to talk to the British officer in charge. And Frost walks on and goes, what do you want, laddie? He goes, well, we want to negotiate a surrender. And Frost goes, I'm sorry, I can't do that. German aide goes, why? He's like, well, my men and I don't have the resources to handle all you guys in a POW pen. We are not prepared for you to surrender. And the German's like, we're not here to surrender. We want you to surrender. Oh, well, and he's, go to hell, was his response. All right, so he's like, oh man, that was cool a couple days ago. Now, what am I going to do here? So, however, the Germans come up, and Bittrich leads them. And there's Waffen SS. And the Brits are expecting to get shot. That's what's going to happen to us. And what happens is rubble is cleared, and a chuck wagon is brought forward. And even the SS hand out chocolate bars and food, and they say, you're our prisoners, but because the few of you fought us so hard for so long with nothing, we're going to give you a good meal. We cannot believe what you guys just did. You have honored yourselves and your country. No one could have held out as long as you guys. You're going to be prisoners, but you did a heck of a job in Frost Lake. All right. I'm going to be a prisoner, but at least I'm not getting shot. So, Earthheart is 2 miles away. He actually moves west. He actually occupies Modal's old headquarters in this old hotel. And he's slowly being surrounded. He can't get to Frost. He also can't get away. His backup, supposed to land with him, was Stanislaw Sosabowski, one of the few British units that were able to escape from Poland in 1940 or 1939. They badly want to get back at Germany. They were supposed to be parachuted in a week earlier, 4 days earlier, but the bad weather prevented them. Finally, Sosabowski says, I don't care what the weather is, if it's not raining, we're jumping. And he and his men jump, but their landing zone is way to the south. Sitting there waiting for them are a group of Germans who once again begin to machine gun as they land. Sosabowski and his men drive them off, but they actually find out they're on the wrong side of the river. They're on the German side of the river without any help whatsoever. They need boats to get across. The only thing delivered to them are like inner tubes, like, river rafting inner tubes or old truck tires. And they have a pulley system across the Rhine where they're supposed to go hand over hand floating, getting soaking wet with all their gear on, food, ammunition, supplies brought for Earthheart. When a German spots them, the Germans shoot flares, and Sosabowski and his men are trapped in the middle of the Rhine River, and most of them are shot and killed in the middle of the river. When it's all said and done, 10,000 British and Polish paratroopers parachute into Arnhem. When it looks like there's no other recourse, the wounded and the medics and the chaplains volunteer to stay behind. Earthheart tells his men to scatter. And a lot must be said for the bravery of the Dutch citizens who hid paratroopers in their barns, in hay bales, in their cellars, in their attics, and in groups of 3, 4, and 5, and sometimes as much as 20, they get out of Arnhem. 2,183 will make it out to fight another day. 2,183 make it out. So this is Arnhem on September 17th. The parade is starting, the tanks, the people are jubilant and happy. They've busted out their flags. In reprisal for celebrating and helping the Allies, the Germans will firebomb Grave, Nijmegen, Eindhoven, and Wegel. They will try and raze the cities to the ground as punishment for helping. These are one of those, if you see the photos of the people in the old two-handled handcart dragging all their stuff with them, well, it came from Operation Margin Garden. Their entire lives and homes for the second time were just destroyed. They thought they were liberated. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We got this. And the Allied army had to retreat. The last 250 of the British Red Devils will be pulled out later in October. They are pulled out by Easy Company. This is actually shown in one of the episodes of Band of Brothers, when Easy Company will bring out the last 250 guys, and a bond has grown forever between the British Red Devils and the 101st Airborne as a result. Market Garden destroyed old world family relationships. Browning, Earthheart, Frost, and Montgomery, their families were old aristocratic friends. Earthheart and Frost will just go hog wild on Browning and Montgomery. You knew this was there. You didn't tell us what was up ahead. You lied to us. You hung us out to dry. So the four men, their family relationship breaks forevermore. Montgomery, trying to be a gentleman, writes to Earthheart. He didn't want to see him face to face, and he says, "Centuries of British deeds and arms are no more glorious than yours. British soldiers forevermore will have a hard time meeting your standard. When asked from now until your dying day, you can always say, I fought at Arnhem." And Urquhart's, yeah, and we lost. We got killed. 79% of my guys are dead because of you, moron. This doesn't help. The counterattack comes. Most of the 23,000 vehicles will be destroyed or have to be abandoned as Allied soldiers make it on foot. A month before, they were pursuing the German army across France with impunity, saying the war is going to be over, while the hunters have become the hunted. The airborne units who were told they would be there for 4 or 5 days wind up staying until mid-November. They've got to fight a retreating, delaying action to get everybody out, so as much of the mechanized trucks, tanks, jeeps as possible can be brought out of the Netherlands to get ready to finish the war in the springtime. So, the 82nd Airborne will lose 1,700 men killed, about the same number wounded. 101st lose 2,100 men, and many others, infantrymen, tankers, are wounded or missing. When it's all said and done, of the 35,000 paratroopers that go in September, around 17,000 are out of action by the time it's all said and done. 50% are done. When asked about it, Montgomery says, "What do you mean Market Garden was a failure? To me, it was 90% successful. We got just about everything we wanted except the Arnhem River Bridge." And they said, "Moron, the whole thing was about the Arnhem River Bridge. Everything else was pointless. We needed to get over the Rhine, and we're still there." And because he's Montgomery, he blames it on Eisenhower. And he says, "I told Ike that I needed everything, but he refused to give me all the gasoline and ammunition, and he gave it to Patton and Bradley. Therefore, Ike is responsible for this failure and not me." Again, we're 90% successful. And this just makes Patton and Bradley go insane. And a positive actually comes out of it. Bradley says, "I told you, Monty was going to punk out and hang the whole thing on us. I said, broad front. We need to open the port at Antwerp and give all three armors everything we got and then smash into Germany." Patton says, "Well, been sitting here now for a month. I'm 10 miles from Germany. Hadn't been able to move. My tanks might as well be pieces of granite. While I've done that, the Germans were able to lay mines. They've destroyed many of the canals. My way into Germany a month ago is now gone. Ike, it's going to cost a lot of lives to get into Germany." I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. Now, when Eisenhower hears what Montgomery said, Montgomery said, Eisenhower should be relieved. I need to take over command of this army. I'm the only one that knows how to wield the power. Eisenhower calls him in and says, Monty, you asked for every resource available. I gave it to you. Everyone said that this operation wouldn't work, and you said it would. And I backed you, because if it had one chance in 1,000, we would do it. But if you ever say anything like this again, I'll fire you. Do not ever speak about me or to me this way. And Montgomery says, piss posh, you can't fire me. I'm Bernard Law of Montgomery. The British citizens love me. Ike says, well, I'll take it to Churchill and King George. Monty says, go ahead, they'll back me. Eisenhower got that sly little grin. He goes, are you sure about that? Why don't you pick up the phone and call him? Monty calls his bluff. The cocky little punk he was, calls Churchill. And Eisenhower says the smile on his face grew by the minute, because he could hear Sir Winston on the other end. Fire you? Well, by God, it's about time Eisenhower came around to the idea. I wanted to fire you after Goodwood. The only guy who's kept you in a job is Eisenhower. I sure as hell wouldn't make him mad. And Churchill hung up the phone. And Montgomery didn't say a word. Not, I'm sorry, sir. No problem, sir. He leaves and writes pretty much a 2-letter apology. General Eisenhower, I'm so sorry. I was insubordinate. You will have no further trouble from me. You are in charge. You will remain in charge. I am, from this point on, now and forever, your servant, Bernard Law Montgomery. So a little bit of silver lining to the whole debacle. But Antwerp will not be open until November. By then, it starts to snow. This is the port of Antwerp while the Germans occupied it. A very big seaport coming in just in the upper edges of Belgium. Here it is, right up in here. This is that same port after the Germans, who were surrounded on, it's called the Scheldt Estuary, said, well, if we're going to get captured, we might as well make it as hard as possible. And a group of Canadian infantry fought them tooth and nail from the land part of Belgium all the way out to the North Sea. And as the Germans retreated to the sea, they blew up the entire port. So by the time we, get it cleared out, winter is coming on, and it doesn't matter anyway. As Bradley says, the British will bog down. Patton says, here we go again. And everyone believes it's going to be a winter campaign. We'll settle in for the winter. In the spring, we will be able to capture Germany. We've eliminated at least the V1, V2 rocket sites, and everyone thinks a couple more months and it'll be over. What nobody knows is that 3 weeks from the time the port of Antwerp is finally open, the Battle of the Bulge begins in the coldest winter in northwestern Europe in the 20th century. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story for next week, provided we're able to get in and we're not snowed with many feet of snow that are clearly on the way. So, that's it for tonight. Short but sweet. Anybody have anything?